I'm Sallyanne Atkinson, former Lord Mayor of Brisbane. It's extraordinary to think now that back in 1979, when I first went into the council, there was not one woman in the House of Representatives. I wish I could say I had some great and glorious, noble reasons to going into politics, wanting to change the world. I'd actually first got interested in politics in a laundromat in Edinburgh, where I was living with my husband and 3 very small children, talking to a woman standing at the next machine who said, "Are you interested in politics?" Well, it's a bit like, you know, do you like your mother? Oh, yes, of course. And she was a member of the Conservative Young Mothers group, and she was telling me how they had meetings once a month and babysitters for the children. Babysitters! Ha! I was there. One of my friends had a husband who was in the council. I campaigned for him, so that gave me a bit of a taste of politics itself. And back in Brisbane a couple of years later, I sort of accidentally went to work part-time for Jim Killen, who was Minister for Defence, and I discovered actually I really did enjoy the social work side of politics, people coming with their problems and being able to fix them. And then the local alderman unexpectedly decided to retire, and people said, well, why don't you have a go for that? So I was elected as an alderman. I was then elected leader of the Liberal Party in the council, and then a couple of years after that I became Lord Mayor. But it was an interesting time politically. Well, first of all, because in Brisbane our council is very political. The Lord Mayor was elected pretty much like the Premier or the Prime Minister. He was the leader, and he was a he, of the majority party. But Russ Innes changed the Act in 1983-84 to have the Lord Mayor of Brisbane elected at large, as he once had been. I then had to decide whether I was prepared to give up my safe blue ribbon ward of Indooroopilly, which I'd held very happily and worked hard at for 6 years, but I decided I would go for it. It was double or nothing, and luckily it was double, and I won that election in March 1985. I think the Lord Mayor or the Mayor of a city or a town particularly represents, or should represent, the feelings of the people in that town at the time. I think Brisbane was ready for fresh, new, young, and I was all those things. I was 42, I was unusual, I had a university degree. Nobody in the council had university degrees, very few politicians. I don't think any cabinet ministers had university degrees in those days. So I was a different sort of person. Mother of 5, good on television, had been on television, knew how to work with the media because I'd been a journalist. I did have very clearly defined views about what Brisbane should be and what Brisbane could become. And that had really stemmed from the fact of living in Edinburgh and understanding how fantastic the Scots are at promoting Scotland. And then when I came back to Brisbane, and you know, we were sort of humble about Brisbane. We had a sort of civic inferiority complex. You know, oh, well, this is Brisbane. I got into a taxi one day and said to the taxi driver, "Okay, show me the sights of Brisbane." And he said, "Oh, lady, there's not much to see here." Mount Cootha was the only thing. So I realised then Brisbane really didn't believe in itself. And if you'd come from living overseas, particularly with 3 small children in cold and grey Edinburgh, this is a fantastic place to live. But I wrote a tourist guide to Brisbane, so I suppose my mission, if you like, was getting Brisbane people to believe in themselves. And my vision was, this is a wonderful city like no other city in the world. When I became Lord Mayor, it was a heavy, middle-aged, male, grey-suited atmosphere. Council officers, I think, basically didn't think I could win. I mean, lots of people didn't think I could win. My mother told me I couldn't win. One of the things I discovered in the early days was the amount of power that the Lord Mayor had, different from any other level of government or any other role. Bob Hawke used to always tell me, you know, you're the most powerful politician in Australia. voted in by, nearly 1 million people and in control of the budget, and nobody in your party can do anything to you. And I could understand that it was very difficult for all the men who were heads of the departments. They were all engineers. That was the sort of the standard thing in local government. In those days, local government was very much about, roads, rates and rubbish. So this idea that we would have arts, we would talk about lifestyle, Brisbane's a great place to live, all the other things that come with it. And I think being a woman sort of helped. So quite a lot of the things I wanted to initiate and did initiate because I was able to, but there was a bit of a feeling, oh, well, she's a woman, she would do that, wouldn't she? So we did Australia's first ever cultural policy for local government. One of the things that used to help me in City Hall when I was chairing a meeting of what is now called the Civic Cabinet, I'd look down this table and there'd be 8 of them or whatever it was, numbers, all sort of squabbling a bit about, why is he getting more money for drains and I need more money for roads. And it was just like the family dinner table. Why is he getting more than I'm getting? You love her more than you love me. And running a house and balancing the family budget, similar skills in business or government. Expo 88 was an amazing experience, and I was amazed on a daily basis. For most people in Brisbane, it was the sort of the fun that they had there. The rumour about the New Zealand Pavilion where the queues were so long that a couple got engaged. For me, it was really more the people that I met. Extraordinary to think about it now, but everybody came from everywhere. So the King and Queen of Spain came. Of course, Queen Elizabeth actually opened it, and Maggie Thatcher and Dennis came, dignitary after dignitary. It was just, there were so many insights into different cultures. But the benefit of Expo for the people of Brisbane was the self-confidence it gave us as a city. The rest of the world is coming to our place and saying it's wonderful. Oh, perhaps it really is wonderful. And we're no longer finding that great southern put down that, oh, Brisbane, why would you want to live in Brisbane? And I can remember coming back on the ship from Scotland, and the ship came through Melbourne, this was in 1970, and somebody saying to me, oh, why are you going to Brisbane? And I said, oh, well, that's where my husband comes from. And this guy saying, well, I reckon that's grounds for divorce. And that's what people thought of Brisbane. I think what I'm proudest of is South Bank, which happened, of course, actually after I had left office. But all the fights and the dramas to save that site, and I'm looking at it, to save that site from being wall-to-wall office buildings. I mean, Joe's plan was, and a good plan, was to sell off all that land that had been resumed for Expo for commercial real estate. But I had realised what a wonderful big site, a big open space close to the city, what that can do for a city. And then luckily, during Expo, of course, the people of Brisbane went, wow, wacko, we've got all this, no, we want this to continue. So having fought 4 premiers for it, it actually and eventually happened. And because I live close to it, I walk down there, I eat down there, I go to the kitchen garden and pick herbs from it. I just think what a wonderful resource that is. And there can be few cities in the world that would have that amount of open space on the banks of the river, within walking distance of the CBD, and now lush gardens, and the best playground in the whole world is down there on South Bank. One of the absolutely truths of life, political life, is that everybody does some good, and usually they don't get credit for that in their own political life, but everything leads on to everything else. It's just like one's own life. Everything you do in life influences everything that happens later on.